Welcome back. So we got this debate to discuss that will today's comic actually one of the darkest DC comic or like is it like overhyped? So today we are gonna review Batman Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious earth, written by Grant Morrison and the art is by Dave McKean. This is a new edition, the DC Black Label edition, and this is one of those psychological horror, I believe. And this is an interesting comic, like I won't lie, this was like it had some interesting stuff, and the story is like more interesting, and there's a lot of depth. And actually this comic does not have any chapters, it's a one shot completely, which makes this a bit special. So this is Arkham Asylum, this is the main cover, and this is a trade paperback edition. I thought this was a paperback, but there's a difference between trade paperback and a paperback, which is I didn't expected that. But anyhow, this is a side spine of this. It's all right. It's the old DC logo here, and this is the back side. There is like a beautifully restored Batman classic. Yeah, Batman classic definitely. And this was launched, I believe, back in 1998. I don't remember the date so well. And IGN has rated this as one of the finest superhero books to ever grace a bookshelf. So yeah, maybe we can relate to that to some extent. And this retails for 19.99 USD and 25.99 Canadian. And yeah, this is rated for 17 plus. Yeah. So let's start the review of the video. First of all, the paperback quality is really nice, and the moment you open this is really it gives a vintage vibe there. And it's a bit weird, this comic, like what's the purpose of this, I personally don't know. But this is weird, like what's the purpose of this, just ask yourself. And yeah, give some horror vibe to you. And yeah, this is this got a lot of references from Alice Adventures in the Wonderland. So yeah, first of all, let's discuss the story a bit. And I won't spoil much. Let's just say that in this story, the Arkham inmates had took control over the Arkham, and they demand the Batman to come. And Batman comes, and then there is some interaction between them. And also this story focuses, anyhow, so the story focuses on the owner of Arkham, the person who made the Arkham Asylum. So that's also a good take in the story. And yeah, that's it for the spoilers. Like if we dive deeper, then there's definitely spoilers there. And let's just appreciate the art right now, which gives you a vibe of some fever dream, I would say. Yeah, fever dream. And I really like the aesthetics of the Gotham. Like here you can see this. And the Batman, it's like the shadow, not even Batman. And I really like how they integrated the dialogues for Joker as is non-bubbly and reddish with a unique font, which is definitely good. And for Batman they use the black boxes, which is great. And it's really weird comic, I would say that. Like you might not understand this. Actually, I had to reread it. Some panels needed to be reread in order to understand. And like the art style is the standout definitely in this comic, because that's the most creepiest and eerie thing in this comic. Here's the design of Joker, really creepy. And like even his character in this comic is so weird. Like he just explained how he killed a woman and the child, and in front, and he tells us in front of that woman's husband, and then he just kills him too. That's crazy, definitely. And he demands spoiler warning right now, we're gonna dive deeper in the comic. So he demands, but he just argues with Batman, and like demands him to do some stuff. And like there are several doctors, there are several staff of the Arkham which are supporting society, I believe. And he just demands, he also steals the Two-Face coin, Harvey's coin, so he can't really make decisions, he's jumped now. So he demands Batman to search. And Batman with this, I believe Dr. I forgot her name, by the way. I read this comic 2 days ago, and it was a really nightmare to read this, I won't lie. First of all, my routine is I always read comic before sleeping, and the moment I read this one, that day I struggled to sleep. So not so good memories with this comic, by the way. Really not good. I literally then I just this was also not my first, but my one of those comics which I own, which I wanted to finish as quick as possible. Yeah, that's what I wanted. First was the Watchmen, mainly because that got boring. Yeah, Dr. Ruth, I forgot her name literally. So Dr. Ruth, yeah, she and other inmates in Gotham, they are supporting Joker, and it's really creepy. The art style especially, just see this page and you will realize that there's a reason why this is 17 plus, bro. Anyhow, there's backstory of the Arkham owner, a boy and his mother, and that's a really deep connection between the story, that's really great. And as you move on, there's just really weird art, I would say. What's the purpose of this art, I don't know, but this creates a psychological impact, I believe, which is the reason why this is a psychological horror. And there is this really good scene where Batman is there's his backstory here, replicating he remembering, and then this blood sequence here, this is creepy, and so much weird too, because you don't really understand what's going on. But yeah, as you move on, you slowly try to start to understand what's going on. And there's just too much blood in this one, so it's a bit weird. Anyhow, there are some weird arts, and Batman just that's not so Batman. I know there's just interaction with Scarecrow, we got interactions with the Penguin, and this all just tie up, which is a really great thing. And then there is this one with Mr. Freeze, and Mr. Freeze design, he's just so weird, alien type, which isn't Mr. Freeze, because Mr. Freeze is technically a he's a type of guy who just lost his wife, and just and there's just as we move in between the story of Batman, there's just small flashbacks of the Arkham owner, the place. This is definitely Killer Croc, and I really liked his design. It's not a croc, but it's definitely good, and Batman struggles to fight against him, which is even great. But this isn't really Batman. What the just see his design and you will understand. But yeah, it's cool. And they just explain everything, some stuff. And yeah, then we meet this guy, another doctor, by the way, I forgot his name too, Dr. Cavendish, yeah, really weird name. And he explains how the boy's mother, who was Arkham's owner boy's mother, in the start, she feared bats. Yeah, bats. So that just tells us that Batman and the madness in the Arkham is tied to the Batman as well. So Batman and Arkham Asylum is connected a bit, which is really good, I believe. And then we just have some flashbacks, and Dr. Cavendish getting a bit too mad, and then Dr. Ruth, she's taken the hostage here by Dr. Cavendish, and she just kills, and this sequence is really psychological, I would say. And then we got this sequence Yeah, this one, just focus this one. This clearly doesn't look like Batman, and it's definitely not my favorite, not even favorite. It's not, I dislike this design of Batman a lot. This just doesn't feel like Batman, like, it's not Batman, literally it's the Bat, I would say. And then we got this, like, deal here, like, I believe the ending was a bit confusing here. But what I think, like, my theory for the ending is that, Batman and Joker made this, I guess, deal where they, like, asked Harvey to flip the coin. So they decide what to do, like, if it lands on, such thing. So yeah, if it's a scarred face, he dies here, and if the unmarked face, he goes free, like, inmates, I would say. There's this, like, flipping, and then, this is really good one shot here, like, I if you see from back, Batman hated just, just being even close to Joker, but here they are standing aside, and, like, Batman goes inside Arkham, I believe, and, like, that's confusing, because personally I don't know if he went inside or went outside, but I guess he went inside. And then there's no dialogues, barely any dialogues, and just, pictures, and that's it. That's the comic, like, this comics leave you in just thoughts, like, what is going to happen now. So then again, Alice Adventure in the Wonderland, you know, reference, and then there is this, files, like, dialogues, I believe, yeah, describing the um personality of each character. We got Batman, Joker, Two-Face, Black Mask, which is crazy, like, he's Black Mask, so they didn't give him anything, just plain black. Mad Hatter, Killer Croc, Dr. Destiny, Maxi Zeus, Clayface, Professor Milo, and that's it. Then we got about bit about Grant Morrison, Dave McKean, and then, just some extra stuff, that how this was transferred into digital form, the original, and then, just some biography of each one. And then we got the entire script, yeah, the entire script of this whole comic, which I, by the way, didn't read. Although I love reading scripts, but, this comic just, wasn't for me, so I just didn't read this. And then we got some sketches in the end, which is good, I really like them. And then we get the art gallery, which is great. It's kind of hard to imagine how they, like, transform this into, that pixel, comic panels, because this is hard to imagine. Like, can you imagine the, like, these are the rough drafts for what they made in panels earlier, like, especially this one. I guess we can show the difference from this one. You just see this panel right here. We will go right back around here, yep, just right here, and I believe this one is the interaction between them, like Gordon and the Batman, I believe, yeah, I guess this one, yep. So this is the real comic panel, and this is the rough draft for this, like, this one, that is crazy, literally crazy. And I'm really impressed by the art. And then we got some just, variant covers here, and this is super creepy. I don't know what the heck is this is, just clay mask used for the base of the photo paint, college images for the Joker, and, some other cover arts. These one are, really ugly ones, literally very bad. And this is creepy one. And in the end, these are some hardcover logos, and this is for the absolute edition. And this one is my favorite cover, like, it just doesn't reveal so much, so that's good. And that's pretty much end of the comic. So what's my take on the comic? It's simple. The comic itself was pretty interesting, like, the plot was interesting, the art was horror, and overall it was just good. a nice comic, but it's not really my type. I just, maybe I don't enjoy such comics because Watchmen I did enjoy, but that was a weird one as well. So maybe I just don't enjoy the comics, kind of like psychological comics, I believe. But I liked Watchmen, but for this one I didn't really liked it, and didn't really understood it, if I'm being completely honest. Like I didn't understood a lot of stuff in the comic, but ending was confusing, and there is just so much going on, and you just do not understand what the hell is going on. So yeah, in conclusion, I would say I would just rate this comic like a 7.5 or a 7 out of 10. Yeah, mainly because it's just not my thing. Maybe for you guys or other guys you will love it, but as for me I would give it a 7.5. Yeah, 7.5 out of 10, which even makes it lower than Hush, which I, to be honest, did not expect it. And not because this comic is bad. This comic just isn't my type. I just don't like this one much. But there is no fault in the story and the art. It just gives what it justifies. So overall, yeah, that was pretty much it. The horror element was really great in the comic. It just mess up your mind a bit. But yeah, that's it. I hope you liked today's video. We have some comics left to review, and we will be making a review on them as well. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. Make sure to leave your review or thoughts or correction in the comments, and till then, take care and goodbye.